Hi, and welcome to this presentation on trading the news. I'm John Jagerson. This video is brought to you by ALPARI. Now, trading the news, this is actually one of my favorite topics. I'm very interested in fundamental analysis, and largely that fundamental analysis comes to us through the news. So the news in the Forex is very economically centered. So versus, let's say, for example, something from the stock market, which can be very financial analysis oriented, the financial statements, income, earnings, profits, and that sort of thing. Whereas in the Forex, we get a lot of economically centered news. One of the other advantages that we have as news traders, or as traders who are interested in the news in the Forex, is that it's very predictable. So now, I have to qualify this just a little bit. That does not mean that we know what the news is going to say. We just know when it's going to come out. In my experience, there's a little bit less of the surprise announcements in the Forex than there is in other capital markets where you're looking at very micro economies like an individual company, for example. Now, what this means, though, is that we know when those announcements are going to come out. So this is important because one of the things that we need to be very aware of as Forex traders are, well, when is that news going to be out? Because one of the things we can rely on, if we don't really know the results in advance, is we can generally predict that there's going to be volatility. So price action is going to be accelerated during the big announcements. Let's take a couple of classics. There are non-farms payrolls in the U.S. is typically accompanied by a fairly robust amount of volatility. What that means is when you're looking at when the news is going to come out, you can start to look for big announcements, whether that means it's non-farms payrolls report in the U.S. or the CPI report coming out of the U.K. or whatever it is. You know when you should be paying attention to your trades because you may want to take some action. You may either want to enter into your position if you're long and the volatility subsequently starts to resolve to the upside. You may want to add a little bit to that position. Or conversely, if that volatility finally works out to the downside, you may want to start to remove some of your market exposure or add a hedge or diversify it out a little bit. The great thing about it is you can predict when this volatility is likely to occur if you can't necessarily predict which direction it's going to go. It's still very, very helpful and extremely important. Now, where do we get that volatility? Well, where do we get these announcements? Well, we know in advance where they're coming from because we can look at economic calendars, news calendars. In fact, there's a great version of one on the ALPARI website, so go check that out. In fact, I would make it part of my daily routine just to see not only what's coming out today, but to kind of work ahead about a week. What's coming up over the next week? It's really easy to just forget, and depending on what you're trading, some of those announcements that you don't normally pay attention to may become very important if you're trading one of those crosses or a particular currency that will respond very robustly to that particular announcement. So it's good to always have that fresh in your mind. If you don't know what something is, look it up and investigate it for yourself. Now, what about the news itself? If we can see when it's coming here on the calendar, what about what the news actually was? So when the NFP report really comes out, or when the CPI report really comes out, what were the numbers and what were traders doing with it? Well, I would suggest doing two things. Number one, make sure you have your MT4 platform open on the day that you're looking at the news reports themselves. So if you were watching, for example, for the CPI release, it comes out. The advantage here is you can not only see what the response is, which will be immediate in the price action, so you'll be able to see what's going on in the charts, but down in the terminal, on the MT4 application, there is a news tab. You can pull that up and you can see exactly what's going on as the news is released. It's all delivered right to your desktop, which makes it very convenient. So once again, the reason why we trade the news, or why the news matters to our trades in the Forex, is not so much that we're trying to predict the future. It's a matter of, and the advantages that we have are, we know what type of news is most important, we know where we need to be educated, we know approximately when it's going to come out. We can use calendars and such to start to plan our trades, and we can typically rely on some volatility, some increased price actions, which can result in one of two things. Either one, it may be an opportunity for us to enter a trade, and typically you'll see a lot of breakouts from technical patterns, these kinds of things clustered around news events, as well as it alerts us to the fact that this may be a period of time we need to cover some of our market exposure or our risk, most of which we all know in advance. So these are the ways in which Forex traders are really paying very close attention to the news. And as you become more experienced in the Forex, you'll start to really develop a feel for what are the trends of particular announcements, what's really going on over the longer term, because that can help you to understand how solid is the underlying trend of this currency pair. If we're getting a longer term view of there's been a lot of bad announcements in a row, maybe the individual announcements have been a little bit random as far as price action, but over the longer term we can get an idea as to how is this likely to impact the longer term trend, what direction should I be trading this particular currency pair, what kinds of trades should I be looking for.
This video has been brought to you by ALPARI.